So UFC Paris was on last night, so in this video I'll be giving my thoughts and reactions to the overall main card. But let me just start by saying the crowd in the Paris stadium was one of the best. Just chanting throughout the whole fights, livening up the stadium. It truly was one of the best fight nights to watch. The prelims was great. We had 4 first round knockout finishes, and then we move on to the main card and we get 4 fight stoppages out of the 6 fights. So yeah, it was a very good card overall and great fights that we saw. So starting off with the first fight of the main card, we had Gomez versus Rushala, which was one of the very few fights that went to the distance. So I scored it 29-28 to Gomez, a clear win, but I mean one judge did score it 30-27, which I think is a bit inaccurate. So in the fight, Rushala really wasn't much of a threat on the feet compared to Gomez. Gomez did have a great first round, however he did slow down afterwards, but still had moments after. And of course, Rushala still showed competitiveness throughout the whole fight, with the third round overall being one of the best of the rounds of the whole fight. So moving on to Sola versus McKee, it was a very good fight to be honest. A weird stoppage from Herb Dean, but Sola was definitely going to win either way. So the first 2 rounds, Sola did win and was putting a lot of damage on McKee, which was present. However, McKee did try to put the pressure on Sola in an attempt to break him down, but a good test for Sola's debut fight overall, and he did show he has great power when he's striking, and he also didn't break down when McKee was trying to, well, let's say pressure walk him down constantly in your face type of pressure. And overall, Sola looks like a new promising prospect. However, on the other hand, McKee unfortunately is now 1-5 in his UFC career, so he must win his next fight, otherwise I do think he has the risk of being dropped unfortunately. So yeah, I hope he does win his next fight. So the next fight was Oki versus Mason Jones, which in my opinion was the fight of the night, the best fight of the whole card. I previously knew that Mason Jones going into the fight, of course, had the grappling advantage whilst Oki had the striking. Oki starting off the fight was ruthless. He was trying to knock out Jones quickly and trying to take his head off. And just when I thought the fight was going to end, Mason Jones truly showed he had a great chin and even overturned the first round and winning it by getting a knockdown of his own against Oki and grappling. And then of course in the second round he comes out and finishes Oki. But really Oki, when he couldn't knock out Jones, he was just punching himself out really. But yeah, great fight overall, give them the bonus. I did think of course Oki was going to win at the start due to of course knocking Mason Jones down and trying to take his head off. But I could not believe the durability of Mason Jones. So yeah, fair play to Mason Jones for getting that W. Moving on to the Paul Craig fight versus Bukauskas. Before the fight, I did pick Bukauskas to win and was correct. And yeah, that is the end of Paul Craig's UFC career. And I mean, it's always terrible to watch a UFC fighter while retire on a loss. But with this fight, Paul Craig is now 1-5 in his last 6 fights. So although he does retire, he does have a pretty good win list of people such as Ankle Ivan Hill. So that's pretty good in my opinion. The elbow landed by Bukauskas to end the fight was extremely brutal, but Paul Craig put himself in this bad position by, well, pulling guard. Now Bukauskas is on a 4-fight win streak. Other than that, I had a feeling Paul Craig would retire in this match. Genuinely, I thought he wasn't going to win this fight, and I thought he was definitely going to put the gloves down, and it did happen. So I mean, fair play to Paul Craig for having a great career. Moving on to the co-main event, the biggest shock of the whole card. Rufi versus Saint Denis. It is safe to say that Rufi got completely fraud checked by Saint Denis. Of course, as we all knew, we knew that Rufi's takedown defense was going to get tested by Saint Denis, by a decent grappler let's say, but he failed to defend the takedowns. Though he did get up at times from the takedown, Rufi looked awful and looked like he had zero preparation in wrestling. And before the fight, I 100% said Rufi was going to win by knockout. I also saw Islam Makhachev's tweet after the fight as well, saying less talk and more train, and to an extent he is right. Maybe if Rufi had better cardio he would have won, as even though Saint Denis won the fight, I still don't think he would fare well against high level lightweights. It didn't even matter that Saint Denis took Rufi down, it was how horrible Rufi looked down there. He looked like he did not want to be there at all, even though he was briefly tagging Saint Denis in the second round. But yeah, he got completely fraud checked, whilst making all of us fans, well, some of us, before the fight, thinking his dynamic striking was going to win in the fight. But overall, this is a terrible fraud check. And it is worse than Bo Nickel, as De Ridder is a great fighter and he's gone on to beat Whittaker. But Saint Denis isn't really that high tier compared to the rest. But really, Rufy just looked completely different once Saint Denis started wrestling. And overall, it's a big stain to the fighting nerds overall. Jean Silva defo needs to win next week. So moving on to the main event, Imavov versus Borrallo. A very anticipated fight, and before the fight I did pick Imavov to win by decision. Of course, Imavov is coming off winning my, favourite UFC fighter, Israel Adesanya, which was not great to watch, let's just be honest. Before this fight, I didn't even realise that Borrallo has not fought in over a year, and that was against Jared Cannonier in August. Overall, with this fight, it is safe to say that Imavov is one of the best boxers in the division and was just too superior for Kyle Borrallo. And even if Kyle went for the takedown, Imavov has extremely good takedown defense, which will be tested to the extreme if he gets a title shot against Chimaev. But of course, Kyle is more of a striker and his jab and hooks was his strengths throughout the fight, but he missed quite a bit, as Imavov's boxing is generally too good, especially his accuracy and speed. So the nickname Sniper, to be honest, is the perfect nickname for Imavov, as he really evaded Kyle's striking and countered perfectly throughout the fight. As well as this, throughout the fight, Imavov's pressure was intense in backing Kyle up in the fight constantly. So this pressure meant that Kyle had no space to decide what to throw, just constant pressure. Though I will say Imavov needs to be more careful with the eye pokes, as he has had 2 against Kyle, and then he also had 1 against Adesanya, and I'm pretty sure 1 against Strickland as well. So scoring the fight, I had it 4-1 Imavov. Of course, there was a scorecard with 5-0. But yeah, Kyle really didn't show much urgency in the fight, even though it was, of course, close each round. But yeah, he just got counter punches anyway by Imavov in many attempts. Kyle did also land a few front kicks and leg kicks, but later on, even though he should have landed more kicks, especially like leg kicks, he kept trying to match the striking of Imavov in the later rounds. But overall, Imavov truly showed he is the #1 contender at the moment. So, of course, Imavov has called for the title shot, and he deserves it. He has very good striking advantage against Chimaev, and he does have relatively good takedown defense. But Chimaev is just too dangerous, and I don't think anyone beats him at middleweight, if I'm being honest. People are saying Imavov doesn't deserve the title shot, but at the end of the day, he beat Adesanya and Kyle, who was unbeaten for 10 years. However, it all comes down to RDR versus Hernandez, as of course Imavov versus Kyle Borrallo went to a decision. It depends on the RDR and Hernandez fight. Of course, if RDR gets an amazing finish over Hernandez, then of course I feel like they're just going to give him the title shot. But yeah, it really depends on who won in the most spectacular fashion. In my opinion, I think Imavov does deserve the title shot regardless. He's been unbelievable. 5-fight win streak as well. So yeah, overall, Imavov is generally one of the best middleweights. And by the way, Israel Adesanya losing to Imavov now, it doesn't seem as bad as it did first, as Israel Adesanya's losses were of course only to champions. And of course, I know Imavov isn't champion, but you can tell he's a championship quality fighter. But yeah, overall, UFC Paris was unbelievable. It was one of the best fight nights of the year. A lot of great fights, a lot of great finishes. And yeah, I'd love to see Kyle Borrallo back in there soon and not take too much time off, as it had been a year since he had fought initially before the Imavov fight. So yeah, I would like to see him back soon, and I would also like to see Imavov fight for the title next. But yeah, I'm also looking forward to Renier de Ridder versus Hernandez. That's a really, really good fight. So yeah, it really depends on the outcome of that, if Imavov does get his title shot. But hopefully he does, he deserves it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Of course, if you truly think Imavov doesn't deserve the title defense, let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, I think he truly does.